What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York. We are back at the St. Vitus basement, and today we are here with Ben of Earthside. It is great to be able to talk with you. Thanks for being here, man.
Thank you so much, Alex. I appreciate you having us down in this lovely red, glowy space.
Oh, it's my second home down here, and it's going to be awesome. Just wait till we get later into the show tonight. It's going to be party central down here.
Sweet.
Yep.
All right.
But it's so awesome to have you here. You have your two singles out now, which is We Who Lament and All We Ever Knew and Loved. Is this maybe a good representation of what like the follow-up to A Dream in Static will be like, or is this just sort of like a one-off experimental or the side quest of Earthside, as I like to say?
Okay. The side quest of Earthside.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. So I would say that both of those songs are representative in their own way of an ingredient or an element of the next record. I would say the new album has, I think it's going to have a lot of things that people who enjoyed the first album will kind of easily be able to hop in again, push play and enjoy right off the bat, with probably a lot of listening on the back end. But we definitely wanted, I think it's a similar shoot for the stars approach that we took for the first record. So there are some pretty out there risks as well. I think the idea of coming back with a single where you don't really hear a drum beat until like 5 minutes in, and it's like a drum duel and it's instrumental, that's a pretty risky move. But we wanted to release sort of a statement track, and we've used the term cinematic rock on the first album, and I think there were maybe people that didn't quite believe it. They're like, oh, like every band is calling themselves cinematic now. So what do you guys think is making you so cinematic? You got keyboards or something like that? You know how to use delay guitar? We're like, how about fucking pipe organ, man? Like, so there's plenty that can be said about that song. But I think when we wrote the first album, over the agonizingly long stint that took, we were significantly younger than we were writing this record, and had different life experiences to that point. I think we were more self-concerned and more thinking about our immediate bubble around us and what's happening in my life and the people immediately around us. And I think with what's changed and what's gone on in the world over the last several years, it's hard not to see a wider view of what's going on and be kind of very upset about it. And
well, you actually led me perfectly into the next question, because do you go into songwriting, whether it would be for this maybe the new potentially new material that we're hearing, or even for A Dream in Static, do you go into songwriting with a preconceived vision or idea that is meant to be conveyed, or being that your music is, as I like to call it, very experimental and having all these different styles, the songwriting in itself is just as experimental as the actual song?
It really depends by the track. We are a little bit unusual in the sense that it's not a band. I think you see in the case of a lot of bands or projects in our, whatever you call our genre, it's usually there's like one guy who's kind of the mastermind, who has the big ideas, and the rest of the band kind of gets the notes, and it's like, all right, do this. And we do have individual compositions, but it's a bit of a mix of democracy, where the songs that we write in practice, which is about half the material, we're all contributing to. And then there isn't really that one singular person. Jamie, our guitarist, does a lot of composition, and he has a very specific style that's very heavy in the orchestration. Frank writes a lot of stuff, and his stuff has its own very kind of weighty, atmospheric, keyboard driven, but also like very dark and hauntingly orchestral, cinematic style. And I'm the drummer who probably should or should not be writing songs, but here we
hey if your drummer sucks, your band sucks. So that's the most important rule.
That's
not just
true.
Not in every single genre, whether you're playing smooth jazz or you're playing grindcore. If your drummer sucks, your band sucks. So.
It's hard to recover from that, certainly.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, I compose stuff, and I don't have like a classical background, so I came from a funk background. My dad was in a touring funk band in the 70s. He had the afro and everything, and I grew up listening to like horn funk in the car with him. So like anything that I compose has a very different rhythmic imprint, or it's even very different from anything that I would write on the drum set, because I'm hearing it in my head instead. So all to say, everything is sort of its own special little experiment, but I think we had different things that we wanted to say on this album, both instrumentally and musically. That was about the same thing. Both instrumentally and lyrically.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to say at the moment, and kind of finding that way to convey some of these very nuanced things. I think one thing that we believe very strongly is that if you're going to make any kind of a grand stand, the music has to back how big or how significant that message is, because everyone's yelling about something on social media or just in person. I think you have to put in, if you are an artist, you have to put in the weight and the consideration to what you're doing to make someone stop and take your take on it seriously.
Well, you led me perfectly into the next question, actually, because before, like, there's a concept, before you, like, have music in mind, do you, like, think of a concept beforehand and, like, present it to, like, you know, Bjorn, who was featured, Bjorn from Soilwork, who was featured on a track, for example? Like, do you, like, have to present the lyrical idea, and maybe that could help influence the sound in itself, or do you and everybody in the band prefer to have, like, a composition already in hand and tell yourselves, okay, this is what the song is going to be about and this is the message it's going to convey?
That's another really every single one of them is different. I think for most of us, a lot of bands, I think, will start with the lyrics and they'll say, like, this is what I want to talk about, so here's my amazing line that I definitely have to have in the song. And we kind of start from the opposite end of things, where the melody is what's most important. So, you know, I think you can say much more with a great melody that really kind of strikes someone at their core, rather than saying, you know, your perfect story with the perfect, you know, number of syllables and things like that. So we'll start with melodies that we all like, and if it's a group composition, we'll each contribute. We'll see what works best where, or if there's a way to take this thing that one of us wrote and, you know, slide it into this other part that someone else has some stuff in and create a compelling beginning to end experience. And then we back up and say, all right, well, what do we mean with this song? What are we trying to say? And how can we keep those same gestures, the same melodic contours to these things, but have them be actual words and tell a story that is meaningful?
Would bringing a different singer on board for different songs maybe add a different layer of context to it, or maybe kind of like add another piece to the puzzle of that?
I mean, one thing that is different about this second batch of songs, the second Earthside record, is that this marks the first time that we've had very specific creative collaborations with some of the new singers that in the first record, we wrote all the vocal parts and we knew going in, all right, we're working with this singer, you know, here's what you're singing, do your best with it. And we'll be there to we'll be there for moral support. With this record, it was more collaborative with the singers. I think there are some songs where it was like the first record, but it's a dynamic process. Some of these singers are way outside of anything rock metal. We didn't want to just work with people that are like, oh, have you heard of all these prog singers or metal singers that are very obvious to anyone who works in our style of music? And we wanted to really take some interesting risks and side paths and kind of tread territory that hadn't been gone over a million times. So you have to kind of see, like, all right, I want this singer to do something they never do in any of their other projects. How are they handling these things? Where can we push them? Where do we have to say, okay, like, this has to be gone about in a slightly different way? So it was more collaborative on that end, and it was also more collaborative in the case that one of the songs is a very personal story to one of the singers that we worked with, like a really heartfelt memento to a loved one of his that had passed shortly before we had recorded the song. There's another song where we sort of started off with the singer and we're saying, you know, this is the general theme, this is what we want to get at with this song, and he sent us a first draft of his ideas, and we liked a lot of it. We just kind of used what he had sent us and filled in the other areas and kind of did our best to just make it compelling and insightful from beginning to end.
When it comes to the songwriting as well, is it better, because you mentioned like everybody in the band brings in their own unique parts to it, not even just instrumentally, but beyond that. Is it better, though, when you're all thinking of the song idea and the album idea and the message, is it better if you really are all on the same page when it comes to songwriting, or could all of you maybe being off in your own worlds maybe actually help enhance what Earthside actually is?
I think it's impossible to be 100% on the same page with everyone. Just, people are different people. And the song we just put out, We Who Lament, which, unlike All We Knew and Ever Loved, that was our keyboardist composition, and we came in and just did our parts to the best of our abilities with it. With We Who Lament, that was a song we wrote in practice, and it's actually almost as old, the basic ideas of it, as the first record. We wrote it like that basic hook with the beat and the guitar lead like 2 weeks before we went into the studio to record A Dream in Static. And we sort of had to practice restraint and not trying to rush that along and say, all right, well, maybe we can do this too. I don't think it would have turned into something particularly good under those circumstances. But yeah, I mean, I think it can, especially with a band like us, some of us can go into a song thinking, all right, this is definitely going to be an instrumental, or this is definitely going to be a vocal song, or it's definitely going to be a song for this kind of a singer. And you have an, okay, that's news to me moment later on. And I probably wrote all kinds of crazy beats in that song that I never would have imagined a singer singing over. But here we are, and I think it wound up pretty cool.
Do you prefer to come up with ideas when maybe you're in the company of your bandmates, or isolation being such a great feel for creativity, you prefer to write alone when there's nothing between you and your instrument?
I think it's a mix of the two. Again, I'm giving you every kind of middle of the line answer with all kinds of qualifications.
Doing a good job at it.
I'm the rambler, or I'm one of the two rambly ones in the band.
Always the drummers.
And our guitarist in this case. We can ramble forever. But let's see. So I think, again, it's a mix. I think I will write very differently at the kit relative to what I hear in my head on a given day. And the first thing I'll usually hear will not be a drum. It'll be a guitar or a melody, and my brain will start to think like, oh, okay, like, well, what's the pulse under this, and what kind of things are accenting what? And I'm not thinking about it in that level of like procedural check off the box. It's just that's kind of the starting point. So for things that I'm writing, like a song, that's just kind of my own thing. And then I'll bring it to the other guys. I'll bring it to Jamie and to Frank, and they'll say like, oh, okay, like these chords here are kind of boring. Like, let's make this more interesting, or, let's fill out a cooler keyboard voice here. And Ryan will get it in front of him and come up with way cooler bass lines than I could ever come up with. And I think it's similar with the other guys too, that Jamie he has probably the most individual compositions on the new album, but with any of these things, he's getting our feedback. At the end of the day, whoever wrote the song gets the final say, so we can be like, I don't know. It's like, no, this is how it's going to be. But that's fair, I think, if it's the person's song. And I think oftentimes if that's your original idea and you know the intention behind it, you're going to know how to ultimately bring it to fruition in the proper way.
You just answered not only the last question, but the other question I was about to ask you, which, how do you know you're finished with a song? But you just nailed that question. So we could.
Well, I think I could add one thing to it, is if there's a great part that just like happens somewhere and it has nothing to do with the rest of the song, or if it feels like the ending, like it happened and then you got to the end of whatever was supposed to be the ending of the song, and it's just like, why didn't that come back? It's often like, yeah, let's maybe bring that part back, or yeah, let's like leave a little hint or something of that earlier. Jamie and Frank, but I think especially Jamie in his, he's really a brilliant I think he'll tell you more than a guitarist or anything, he's a composer. That's like, you have in this band a keyboardist, a drummer, a bass player, and a composer who just uses guitar kind of as his medium to get those ideas out. But he has this brilliant way of like seeing like, okay, there's this little piece of this thing later that we can kind of hint at here. Like, I can use this little part of it. So it's kind of subconsciously in people's minds. And then when that comes back at the end, they're going to be like, oh, this is what that was kind of going towards. So we like to have a lot of those connecting threads across the song. If you're going to have a 10-minute song, it's probably better if it's not like riff salad and nothing connects with anything else. So
yeah,
that's kind of that. And I think also is it a song that we want another collaborator or some kind with? Could it be elevated by working with someone? So
and the final question I wanted to ask you actually is, when it comes to playing live, and there are different, you're bringing in songs from different time periods and different eras from your catalog. Do you feel that brings a new layer of context to it as well when you're bringing it to a live setting for the audience to interpret, and you are, going from a Dream in the Static song to a new song and then back to a Dream in the Static song?
Yeah. I think we are people who will sort of shoot for the stars with what we write, because that's the immortal thing. That's what people are going to be living with and listening to for however long. And then it can be kind of a process of like, well, we never necessarily thought out how this is played live. It's got a very specific, maybe there are many minutes where the four of us as the instruments that we aren't doing a lot. It's like a pipe organ or something is kind of holding it down for a while, and we're not bringing a pipe organ with us. So how do we change up either the order of events in a song for live, or how do we change up the instrumentation to make it compelling? We definitely love the energy of playing live and kind of feeding off of that with each other. So it's kind of when it comes together, it's ultimately a fun challenge of being able to take what we feel are these very epic sounds and find a way to make them compelling live, whether through who's doing what, if there are cool ways in which we're interacting with each other, or someone is doing double duty with another instrument, or we have some kind of audio-visual accompaniment, as we will have tonight, and as we have had on throughout this tour. How do we go about making the show that we would think is really cool to see as an audience member? Yep.
Definitely. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Just you with these 2 new singles out, what else could we be expecting from Earthside in the future, if you're, of course, allowed to say, after this kick-ass tour with Vola?
Let's see. Well, hopefully not a long-term indefinite hiatus. I don't I don't think that's going to be it. It will definitely be a new record. And yeah, we're pretty much in the extreme twilight of that. Things are mixed for most of the new material, and I think there are just a couple more songs that we have to send out. And then once we've delivered that, I'd say early this next year, we'll have the record out, and that'll be really cool. We're all really excited about it. The road to this point has been pretty stressful, and we started this pre-COVID, and we had people lined up for it, and then COVID happened, and all kinds of collaborators and people we were working with had ways in which their lives looked totally different on a day-to-day. But we've worked through that, and we're left with well over an hour of material that we're really proud of.
Oh shit! What was that? Oh, mother! I thought there was a power outage. I'm not cropping that out, by the way. I'm keeping that there.
I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But on that note, thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Earthside. New stuff coming very soon. We will see you next time on Heavy New York.